Welcome to a special edition of Cars on Call. This is automotive journalist Steve Schutz, and I'm here with a special guest, Andy Choi. Before we get it to Andy, I'm going to just say a shout out to our two co-hosts, Dr. Stephan Moran, our trauma surgeon, and of course, Adams Hudson. Both are unavailable. But I'm using this opportunity. We are old. I'm old. Adams Hudson is old. Dr. Moran is old. And I've always thought, let's get some new blood on here and get somebody who represents another generation of car enthusiasts. And that's what Andy Choi is. I met Andy when he was in high school because he's good friends with my son, Carl. And Andy is now deep in the car world, working in management at a BMW dealership. So, Andy, say hi and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing, and then let's get into this.
Sure, absolutely. Well, thank you so much again for having me on today, Dr. Schutz. It's an honor to be on your podcast. I've been following you since you and Dr. Moran started it from your first episode. It's been amazing to see how you guys have grown and the amount of traction that you're getting and the positive feedback on the show. So for me, hopefully I can live up to your previous amazing host you've had here. But
Believe me, that won't be hard.
but absolutely. But yeah, again, Dr. Schutz, it's a pleasure. And a little correction. So so you and we've known each other for about 24 years. So that I met you in elementary school, not high school. So that's
That's
what,
right.
yeah,
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
I
So
knew that, but yeah,
no, so I've known you almost as long as your youngest son Peter has, right? But it's good,
true.
So yeah, Carl and so when I first moved to Boise, and Carl and I fast became best friends. We're best friends to this day, and I'm very fortunate to be able to meet a car enthusiast, a car nut like you. So it's been a great pleasure to be able to talk cars with you, be able to have access to your cars and have these experiences that I would have never had growing up. So thank you again for the Dr. Schutz. A little quick introduction about me. I'm Andy. I am currently in the leadership development program at Sonic Automotive. So it's Sonic. We're the fifth largest automotive leadership group in the United States.
I
And
always, it's
right,
funny
yeah,
whenever I see this because of
yeah.
course, I read about these dealership groups in automotive news,
Hmm.
and I always smile because let's make this official, Andy.
Yes.
Your dealership group does not sell hamburgers.
No, we do not. We do not. We have free coffee and some snacks, but yeah, we don't have we don't have
Because,
hamburger.
everyone thinks you think of Sonic, you think of drive up and you get a hamburger.
Exactly, exactly.
So
That's
you
true.
guys are separate. There's no connection anywhere.
Right, exactly, exactly. I wish we do get hamburgers here and there, but we do get the food truck that comes every day. But and they cater for us on Saturdays for employees, that work on weekends. So it's like their way of appreciation, so which I'm very appreciative for. But yes, going back to your thing, yeah, we're completely separate companies.
And
Yes,
before you get into that,
yes.
fourth largest dealership group, it is very big. You're talking national footprint. How many
Mhm.
dealerships roughly?
I believe it's
How many stores?
around 110, like somewhere between 110 and 120,
Wow.
as far as I know in North America. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I've always wanted to work in the automotive business, just never knew how to do it or like how that business worked. And for me, ever since I was young, when people ask me what my dream was, people will tell you, hey, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be a teacher, I want to be a yeah, like my thing was I want to run a car dealership, I want to be a GM of a car dealership. And as I got older, people are telling me, hey, you need to be a little bit more realistic with your dreams, right? You have to like stop dreaming, be more realistic with your goals. And and for me, it's kind of odd, we're going into high school, college, then people did get a little bit more, I guess, realistic with what they want to do, right? Like they want to be hedge fund managers, or I don't know, like it'd be lawyers, doctors, for the ones like who have the brains to do so, like yourself, Dr. Schutz. Well, for me, it's kind of like I never really knew what I wanted to do, but then being a GM of a dealership, that was always the back of my mind, right? It was something that I was at the time I was a bit embarrassed to like tell people, I'm like, look, like I'm like a fully grown adult, but this is what I want to do, but I don't know how to get there. So I, just took the conventional route.
Well,
Just very,
I'm
so,
going to stop you
and
right
then,
there
yeah,
because
yeah,
I find that really interesting.
uh-huh,
Now I would say this,
uh-huh,
and I believe this, and I've had
mm-hmm,
this conversation with would-be physicians. When I was
mm-hmm,
young,
mm-hmm,
like you, I wanted to go to medical school and be a doctor.
Hmm.
and it was very hard. And I had many people tell me how hard it was going to be. And
Hmm.
I think the key, you just touched on what I would say is, I really think this is maybe the key.
Hmm.
And for me, and what you're just saying there, when I was in high school and college and I wanted to go to medical school, I had no
Hmm.
plan B. I was not
Hmm.
interested in a plan B. I didn't
Hmm.
think about a plan B. There was no plan B. And I
Hmm.
and I always thought to myself, well, if I don't get into medical school, I'm really screwed because there is no plan B. Andy,
Hmm.
you didn't have a plan B. You just said, I'm going to do this.
For me, eventually, right? So at 33, I decided to restart my career, and I have to thank my wife for it. And it's interesting, because for me, just the environment that I grew up in, and I think thankfully, and nowadays, it's not as like stereotypical, but of course, back in the day growing up, if you were good, like a good Asian boy, right, like you were supposed to, study hard, get good grades, go to good schools on scholarships, and yeah, you work in a quantitative field or go work for a fan company. So so that's what I did, right? Like after I did my undergrad, I spent 6 years in the commodities trading industry. So and so I spent 6 years with a company called CJ Corporation. So it's a company they spun off of Samsung Group, and then it went back, got my MBA, and after my MBA, I got recruited by Amazon. So I spent 2.5 years as a senior manager at Amazon, and no, like don't get me wrong, I appreciate the experiences that I've had and the opportunities I've had, and I met a lot of great people along the way. But what really got me thinking was one day, my wife asked me, she goes, "Hey, with Amazon, the business running 24/7, she goes, hey, like you're working overnights, you're working weekends, like we haven't, we had to skip our honeymoon because like because you were busy, right?
Wow.
I had to skip my grandfather's funeral because it was Prime Week, and I had to be at work, but she was just asking me, she was like, hey, so like she was like, hey, just like honest question, what's your end goal? Like what's your end goal? Like you're putting in all this grind, but like where do you want to get to? Right. I'm just
Right.
curious, like what your career goals are. And that was the first time I've really sat down and like thought about that, and my thing was like there was no end goal. Like I thought this was the end goal. Like I thought this was how you're supposed to live life. And like as embarrassing as it is, like I thought that's how most people live their life, right? Like that's how success was defined. But then I said, look, like I was kind of living my life the way the society wanted me to live, or like my environment around me wanted me to live, rather than like really figuring out what I wanted out of life and pursuing like what I wanted. So, and she was like, "Hey, you've always wanted to work in the auto industry. Just hey, why don't you figure out how to do that and go after that?" And for me, I was very fortunate. I would say like I was very lucky that one of my friends from the MBA program, she ended up joining Sonic Automotive after graduation in their corporate office, and her husband went through this exact same leadership development program, or LDP program as they call it, 10 years ago when he first joined Sonic. So yeah, so I was able to get a lot of advice from the right people, and unfortunately, they were very receptive to my story and why I was so passionate about cars and being a part of this program at Sonic. And I decided to restart my career at 33 with Sonic Automotive. And when that opportunity came up, my wife was like, "Hey, look, this is like once in a lifetime opportunity. This is what you've wanted to do your entire life. Like don't care about like what they're paying you or whatnot. Just like go into it. Just go into it, achieve your dream, have fun at it." So my thing is, I joined this program to learn how the automotive business works, to eventually achieve my childhood dream of being a GM of a car dealership one day. And yeah, we'll see how that goes, right? I'll go and push as hard as I can and enjoy every moment of it, and absorb everything I can, and hopefully, yeah, hopefully, Dr. Chitz, I'll be able to invite you to my dealership one day into my office as a GM.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll buy a car. So
sure.
you're with BMW or BMW dealership in California. Which one?
Yes. So I'm currently with Stevens Creek BMW. So we're one of the largest BMW dealerships in the Bay Area and one of the flagship BMW stores for Sonic Automotive. And the story of how I got placed here was, so during my interviews, they asked me, "Hey, where do you want to be geographically?" And for me, I was already in the Bay Area, and so with my wife, with her career, she's based in the Bay Area, so we wanted to stay here long term. Quality life is great, a little bit expensive, but quality life is good. And they said, yeah, we have 9 stores in the Bay Area. It looks like 10 now, but yeah. So, what's your favorite brand? And I told them, look, I appreciate every brand, and at the end of the day, where they need me the most is where I belong. But I said, if you put a gun to my head and you told me what my favorite brands are, I told them I like BMWs, Porsches, and Hondas because they simultaneously cater to both the mainstream market as well as the enthusiast, as well as their enthusiast population, right? And these brands also seem to have a very, I would say, like very loyal following from its customers as well. So for me, just being able to be on both sides of the business, right? Just learn how the mainstream business works, but at the same time, be able to have fun with the enthusiast group also. So that's what really attracted me to these three brands. And they said, "Hey, yeah, we can get you over to Stevens Creek BMW." And also, it's basically a 10-minute walk from my current house here. So yeah,
Wow.
worked out perfect for me.
That is perfect.
Uh huh.
On the one hand, the cars are great. I've
Uh
owned
huh.
two BMW M3s. My wife
Hmm.
currently has a BMW station wagon that she absolutely loves.
Hmm.
Um, on the one hand, it of course is an enthusiast car. On the other hand,
Hmm.
most of the BMWs, it used to be when I was a kid,
Hmm.
the 3 Series, the 5 Series, the 7 Series, there was nothing else.
Hmm.
Um, and then now most BMWs are American-made SUVs or crossovers, but
Hmm.
mostly SUVs, the X5,
Yes.
the X3, the X7. That really is your bread and butter. So
Hmm.
it's not just enthusiasts anymore. You said mainstream. I'll tell you
Uh-huh.
this, my uncle, who
Uh-huh.
was one of my favorite people of all time, I was very close with my uncle Peter.
Hmm.
He was a Porsche BMW guy, and in the 80s he worked for BMW of North America. And
Hmm.
I remember there was a real line for him and for BMW North America. If they could get above 80 to 100,000 units a year, that
Hmm.
was a banner year. You're up
No
around
kidding.
350,000 now. You've more than tripled that, almost 4x it. So you're
Uh-huh.
pretty, it's got to be, first of all, really interesting that it's much more mainstream, but also
Hmm.
these are normal customers that are non-enthusiasts. What's it like
Hmm.
dealing with the customers?
Oh, that's a great question. So for me, the one of the most fun parts of this role has been being able to meet and work with the customers. So for me, the customer facing roles I've had in this rotation. So you start off as a porter, right? So you're basically like the first point of contact and last point of contact when you visit the dealership, and then currently I'm in the BDC office, right? So my fourth rotation here is in the BDC office. So you're taking in all the incoming calls. You're basically putting the golf tee and the golf ball on the tee for your sales advisors to hopefully swing the driver and finalize the deal.
Yeah,
But
business development
center, I think, yeah.
consultant or something.
Consultant, yes, correct, yeah. So that's what they call. So yeah, the big part of the job is meeting clients or just interacting with clients. And from my experience, 99% of the customers, they've been fantastic. They're just regular people like you and I. They're very respectful, very courteous, and they're excited to look at the BMWs, excited to experience them. Some of them, I've seen some of them are younger customers that are getting into BMWs for the first time, right? Or maybe some older customers they've wanted the BMW their whole life, and now they're in a position where they can comfortably go and purchase one and achieve their dreams. And we've also had customers like you who their thing was like they said they made the mistake of buying a BMW 30 years ago, and it's been a drug that they can't kick, right? So those come and buy, but it's just been interesting. I think for mainstream cars, the people they want a comfortable car that drives well, and just being able to show them the car, being able to educate them on the car, and just have them experience the cars for themselves. I think that's the big thing, right? I think the big selling point for BMWs is when customers see, hey, like why should I buy a BMW, or like what does BMW do better than say Mercedes or Lexus? I think the big thing is, hey, let's take it for a test. Let's take it for a drive. Let's take it for a drive. Take the car for a drive. See how you like it. And just from my experience, like I'm not just saying it because I work for a BMW dealership, but I feel like from perspective driving dynamics, I think BMW does it much better than most other companies, right?
Yeah.
I just how solid the car feels, like how well it's balanced, how smooth it is, but at the same time how athletic the car is. Just from when it comes to driving dynamics, I think it does a lot better. It is a lot more, I would say. I don't know if better is the right word. A bit more like interactive in a sense, and I feel like a lot of customers, yeah, they do like that experience. So it's been interesting, and I think some of them they've gained a bit more interest in cars after driving BMWs. So that's been a cool thing to see. But sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that
Yeah.
I think that if you want to personalize a car,
Mm-hmm.
a BMW has always been a 38-year-old man or a 38-year-old woman
Mm-hmm.
who's in shape and is
Uh-huh.
wearing kind of a tight t-shirt,
Hmm.
Doesn't look like a gym rat with the muscles too big, but looks fit and healthy. And that
Hmm.
to me is BMW.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. And it's cool to see just how much, I would say, like how much scope the brand has been able to capture just from your young enthusiasts all the way to all the way to like the older, older enthusiasts, or just like older fans of the brand, right? Or whether it's people that are just first getting into the brand, or the people that's been with the brand for decades. It's just been interesting just to see the diversity of the customer base when it comes to who are buying cars, but not necessarily, not necessarily buying, but who are just coming in to look at the cars, right? Because this is something that they've been interested in. And it's cool, right? It's just cool to see the how this brand just caters to the wide audience, right? And that's the cool part to see. And then for me, the other interesting thing for me has been, it's really, I would say, taught me a little bit more about people in general, or just about life. How you get to meet people from all different walks of life. They've been successful in their own way, right? And for me, like I said, it's a little embarrassing, but like I thought everybody was kind of a corporate employee. You just go out there and go to school. You work for a big company, or like work for a startup, and I thought that's how everybody lived. But then when I worked in the business office, when I was working in accounting, I was in charge of compliancing the deals. So once it goes through sales and finance, I would go in and compliance the deals on those cars. And I got to see essentially what people did for a living, and like what cars they were buying, what they did for a living. And I was just like, wow, like there's just like infinite number of careers in this world, and like infinite number of ways to be successful and make a living for yourself. And it
Yeah,
was
I
just an
think
eye-opening experience, just a big eye-opening experience for me.
Yeah, I want to talk about that a little
Yeah,
bit because the
yeah,
average new car price, the average
uh-huh,
transaction price of a new car in the United States is right around $50,000, maybe 48, $49,000. For BMW, I'm sure it
uh,
is 70, 75,
yes,
maybe 80. These
mhm,
are expensive cars, so these are successful people. Give us some
uh-huh,
examples, maybe some a type of job or role or
sure.
who are these people? Give us some examples.
Sure, sure, absolutely. So it's been really interesting. So I know, so because I would say like a good number of people, like they're also like they're kind of I would say the client base that you would expect, and maybe they are engineers, or they're product managers, or they're like a management or senior management role within fan companies or within some successful startups in the area. A lot of them are also the business owners, right? They own they own LLC, like real estate brokerages, or just a lot of self-employed individuals as well. And then you also have some people, I would say, maybe in government. Is it like maybe government companies, state companies? I would say in waste management, or in energy. So you have those kind of customers. And let's see, I think and then some customers were, it's interesting, like the best one I've seen, I've never seen this customer. I don't know what they look like, and I just had a chance to see their credit app, and they purchased an M5 Touring. So they purchased an M5 Touring on a very, very low interest rate, and when you fill out the credit app, you have to put your
An M
company.
M5
Yeah.
Touring, if people don't
Yes.
know, that's what 120, 130,000?
Yes, about 130,000, and a lot of dealers are, they're asking about 20 to 30,000, like
Markup.
the market adjustment on those cars. So yeah, somewhere between 130 to, I would say, 160 with M5 Tourings. And yeah, this customer, I don't know what they look like. I've never met them. I've only seen them on paper, but this was the best credit app I've seen, and it got approved off, obviously, because they've done well and they have very strong credit. But for employment, so on the employer line, like they put unemployed, right? Like you would normally, normally, yeah, you'll put like, I don't know, people Meta, or you put the name of your company or whatnot, and or if you're not unemployed, you would just put like retired or like NA, stuff like that, right? But they like literally wrote unemployed on the line, and said employment income, they put $0, right? They literally put zero, but right, and then on the next like column, you have your like employment income from your company, right? That you take, and then you have like your other income, right? So that will be kind of your if you have income from real estate investments, or
Yeah, sure.
like RSUs or whatnot. And I was also shocked. So they put zero, like unemployed to zero on their annual employment income, but then on the other annual income, it was $2 million, and I'm like, whoa, okay, So that was the best credit that I've seen. But obviously they've done well for themselves, and but no, it's interesting. Just I've seen everything here from real estate developers to your product managers in your big companies, or engineers to your big companies, to so yeah. So sometimes a lot of these self-made business owners. Also we doctors, lawyers. We have a lot of that customer base as well. But just seems to be, yeah, a lot of people that's worked hard, that's done well in their own field, and that's achieved success in their own way. So yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think, you know, everyone always thinks of lawyers and doctors, but
Mhm.
it's interesting. The average accountant started making more money than the average doctor probably 10 years ago.
No kidding.
So accountants do better than the average physician. And
Okay, no kidding.
recently,
Uh-huh.
the average airline pilot now makes more than the average physician. So
Really?
there's other professions that are
Uh-huh.
passing the medical
Hmm.
profession.
Yeah.
I always find that interesting how
Yeah.
it's all, things always evolve and things always change. One question
Hmm.
I have is in all of those, roles and people and the diversity that you're seeing, what do you
Hmm.
think the percentage is of real car enthusiasts versus non-car enthusiasts? BMW is an enthusiast brand that is
Sure.
mostly purchased by
Sure.
non-enthusiasts. But I mean, what is the
Definitely.
breakdown, you think?
Oh, that's a great question. I wish I had a good number for you, but just like if I had to guess, I would say like maybe like 70 to 30. 70 just your regular, just people looking for a good, comfortable luxury car. Maybe 30% who are enthusiasts, right? So like that's kind of what I've seen, right?
Yeah,
But
that
it's a
makes
little bit,
sense.
and it's a little bit difficult to gauge until you talk to them, because sometimes like they are enthusiasts, they love cars, they've had M3s in the past, but now they need a family car, right? So they got married, and they have a family, so the wife sent them on a mission to go buy an SUV, an automatic transmission four-door SUV, and now they're kind of like quote unquote, stuck with an X3 or X5. But so yeah, so I wish I had a better answer for you on that question, but just from what I've seen, yeah, 70 to 30, right?
That
So
makes sense to me. I mean,
yeah.
the average real estate agent, for example, who buys an X5 or leases an X5,
Hmm.
that real estate agent is not going to be an enthusiast. And I'll tell you this, and because I want
Hmm.
to ask you
Hmm.
where you got your BMW, because there was obviously a BMW seed that got planted in you at some point. But for
Sure.
me, I do talk about my early experience with my uncle and an early
Hmm.
ride I got in a 5 Series when I was a kid. But actually,
Hmm.
the M
Hmm.
seed was planted. My sister was working for an advertising agency called Mullen in the early 1990s.
Hmm.
And I went to visit her agency. This is in Massachusetts. After
Uh-huh.
they unexpectedly, surprisingly, because Jim Mullen, who was the founder of the company, was a
Hmm.
huge car enthusiast and a racer.
Uh-huh.
He nabbed the
Uh-huh.
national BMW account in 1994. And
Uh-huh.
I went to visit and I met him and he knew
Hmm.
I was a car guy. And he said, Steve, Erica says you're a car guy.
Hmm.
I just got this would have been the E34
Hmm.
M5. This is Gen 2 M5. He goes,
Hmm.
she said, you're going to lunch, take my car.
Hmm.
And I did. It was my first experience with an M car, and it completely changed me. I didn't realize how good a car could
Hmm.
be. That was a
Hmm.
sublime inline six
Uh-huh.
and a manual transmission. It was wonderful. And that's where I
Uh-huh.
just said, wow, these M cars are different. I've always loved M cars. What was
Uh-huh.
for either M or BMW, what was the genesis for you?
So yeah, that's a great question. And so for me, the big thing was, yeah, I was actually gonna bring this up when when you asked about like the best car I've ever had a chance to have a go in. But for me, the thing that really clicked for me when it came to BMWs and M cars, the genesis for me was back when I was working at Car and Driver magazine. So so my freshman or sophomore year in college, fortunately, Car and Driver was 10 minutes from campus, and it's one of those things. I found that out, walked in the resume, asked for a job, and and they were like, okay, and this kid just walked in, right, to visit us. Okay, so it was fun, right? So I worked with them for just over a year, but
But
going back,
you just
what's that?
you
Sorry,
were
go
a
ahead.
University of Michigan
I
undergrad. You
was
just
yes,
walked into Car and Driver magazine and said, "Give me
I
a
did.
job."
I did. So I found out. Yeah, I found out they're 10 minutes away from campus. I just found out through my local friend, and when he learned I like cars, so yeah, when I Google mapped it, they were 10 minutes away. So I took a bus to just type up my resume, walked in, and I asked if I asked for a job, and so they took me on as a summer intern, and after my internship was over, they liked working with me, so they asked me to stay on, during school, and I did for a year, but then it just got a little bit busy. But for me, the cool part was, you have a lot of access to cool cars, you're surrounded by cool cars every day, and for me, I just remember one day we had a BMW M3 E92 M3. They came in as a press car. It was I don't know what the paint code was, but it was blue. Maybe it was Interlagos blue, or it was a blue. It was very nice, like a dark blue color. It was M3 competition. It must have been 2011, right? 2011 M3 comp, and manual transmission. And I just remember thinking, like, well, I was looking at the car. I've always loved the design of the E92 M3s. So I was looking at the car, and I remember, like, I was shocked already. I was like, this car is what, $70,000 at the time, right? 72,000 sticker price, if I remember. And that was a lot of money, right? Like 72,000 is a lot of money today, but especially back in 2011, that's like tremendous amounts of money. And like, I just remember being shocked because this car was 70 grand and it didn't have power seats, right? Like, of course, for being a competition, like they want to reduce the weight on the car and everything. But like, I just remember sitting in the driver's seat and trying to move the seat forward. Like, I had to pull the lever, and it's kind of, I'm like, that's interesting, right? And at the time, we also had a long-term Cadillac CTSV wagon with the manual. So it was a Gen 2 CTSV, fantastic car, supercharged LSA, is it LSA motor with the manual. And just comparing those two cars side by side, I was just a lot more mesmerized by the Cadillac. I'm like, yeah, this Cadillac's gonna be a lot. It's faster. It's gonna be a lot quicker. Like, there's no way the M3 is gonna hold a candle to this car. So I didn't. So at the time, I kind of disregarded the M3, if you want to call it. I was more excited to have a go in the Cadillac and whatnot. And don't get me wrong, fantastic car. Gen 2 CTSV manual, fantastic car. It's a lot of fun. I would love to own one. But then I had the chance to experience the M3, and that was just a completely different world. And that was the first time I would say that really taught me a car is not necessarily defined by numbers on the paper, not by statistics, but more of like how it makes you feel and how fun it is. In this car, I feel like it was a lot more balanced, right? It felt a lot more raw, and just overall from a fun factor, I there was like the M3 just had CTSV beats, and it was just like a 90-day difference. And for me, just like looking at the spec sheet on the paper, like I couldn't comprehend. Right, this car has 130 less horsepower than the Cadillac, right? And on the paper it's slower, but somehow when you drive it, it's a lot more fun. And and just seeing how fun the E92 M3 was, that was my genesis. I was saying to BMWs, or just opening my like eyes into the M world. And to this day, that was a very special experience and holds a special place in my heart. And so when I had a chance to have a go in your E92, I loved it. And to this day, that's one of my favorite cars. And when people ask, "Hey, what's your favorite M3 or your favorite BMW?" my answer is always the E92 M3, right? And yeah, it's interesting. It's just, I feel like it's just defined by like what experiences you've had, like what emotions this car like what emotions this car triggers for you, and what kind of impression it leaves on you, right? So I know most people, they say they like the E30 M3 and the E46, and yeah, those are great too. But I think for me, just because of that emotional experience I've had with the E92 and how special it felt to me when I got to have a go in that M3 comp, and also in your M3 when you got it from Germany. Yeah, so for me, that's always the special car that I'll always cherish in my heart. Yeah.
I was at it was a automotive journalist event, Laguna Seca Raceway, and
Hmm.
this would have been early days of the E92 M3. So you're
Hmm.
talking 2008, 2009, and I was speaking with
Hmm.
um, whoever the PR boss was for BMW.
Hmm.
And I said, this reminds me of the muscle car era
Oh.
because you had a V8
Hmm.
M3, you
Hmm.
had a V8 S4, and of
Hmm.
course RS4, the Audis.
Hmm.
You had those Cadillacs you're talking about. You
Hmm.
had you had a V8 in a C class, and you had a V8 in an E class, and these were the AMG.
Hmm.
And I thought, this is amazing because what they did was they replicated all the muscle car era was they took relatively small cars and they
Hmm.
took the V8s from the large cars and they stuck it into the
Hmm.
smaller cars
Hmm.
and they gave it a manual transmission and a sporty name and it was pretty cheap for the manufacturers, but it was very effective. And I said, this seems like the same thing. Looking
Hmm.
back now, in the
Hmm.
fullness of time, I think
Hmm.
that's right. And Doug DeMuro has talked about this frequently, saying that was a golden age, the 2000s until
Hmm.
about 2015 was a golden age. And obviously, you were right there. You were young, and this you kind of you got bitten by the bug at that time.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely, definitely. So I think that was a good age to be a car, or a good era to be a car enthusiast in. And like you said, that's when, a lot of manufacturers said they were going a bit like crazy with what they wanted to do with their enthusiast cars, right? And it was
I've
fun.
always thought that
Yeah.
the Germans, there's three things that make German cars uh,
Uh-huh.
special.
Uh-huh.
The first thing is the most important, and I think that German people and German engineers are serious.
Hmm.
And that's an important word because a lot in life, and you know this, a lot of people are just not serious.
Hmm.
And the customers you're seeing in your office, if you're a business owner
Hmm.
or if you are a successful professional, by and
Hmm.
large, you're serious.
Hmm.
And the German engineers are serious. Number
Hmm.
two, they have the Autobahn where it's unlimited and they're used to driving fast. And then
Hmm.
number three, they have the Nürburgring.
Hmm.
And you take that trio of factors, and I think
Hmm.
it makes cars better than it is for other from other countries. I always look at Japan. I think that
Hmm.
the engineers and the people that work at car companies in Japan are very serious. They
Uh-huh.
don't have an
Yeah.
Autobahn, they don't have a Nürburgring, so
Uh-huh.
they're not informed by those two kind of things.
Uh-huh. Yeah, definitely. I think, with German cars, they do have that advantage. I think it's just difference in cultures, right? Like I think with the German, like, in Germany, like you said, the engineers are very serious. They have great technology and they need cars that can sustain high speeds on the Autobahn and for a period of time. And with Nürburgring as well, right? Like, I mean, if that thing was in my backyard, I would be going there every day, right?
Yeah,
So yeah, those kind of things. And it's interesting with Japan as well. I know, in a way, they're very keen on attention to detail, right? Japan's very keen on attention to detail,
yeah,
efficiency. I think is a big thing. And I know, like, you've brought the story up before as well, but like when Toyota came out with the '92 Camry, how that was just a big shock to the car industry, right? And how they really raised
yeah.
the bar for the mainstream automobiles. And yeah, so those things are cool. How Toyota, they have the Toyota manufacturing system, right? Like that. That's kind of like the gold standard for operations nowadays. Right. Like, and just being able to just empowering their workers. So just putting trust in their workers, right? Kind of like the line workers, they know the best on what's going on, right? If there's any deficiencies or if there's anything wrong, like they're going to be the first to know, right? If there's anything that can be done better, they're going to be the first to know. So being able to empower them to leverage their knowledge and skill sets, I think those are the things that Toyota has done extremely well, or Japanese manufacturers have done extremely well. But it's been cool to see, like very cool to see those things. And just a quick tangent to that, Hyundai, Kia, just how far they've come with their build quality and just brand recognition. And I remember when I was growing up, they were just kind of, very cheap economy cars that you will buy, right? And like no one really like pined for a Hyundai or Kia. It was more of like you bought it because you needed like a cheap set of wheels. But nowadays, like you see what they're doing with their cars, and people want a Hyundai, people want a Genesis, right? And it's interesting, just when I was growing up, or my parents' generation, like that's not, yeah, it was like a car you really aspired to, but now like it's become a car that's competing with the Japanese manufacturers when it comes to daily drivers. And like Genesis is like a car that like people are aspiring to own nowadays too. So just seeing the industry as a whole, like it's just been very interesting to see how they've evolved and how these, I would say, big brands are leveraging the strength that they have from their own like countries and like cultural backgrounds to be able to, I would
Yeah.
say, build these cars. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. And Hyundai and Kia in particular now with the rise of
Mm-hmm.
Genesis, it's interesting to see and
Uh-huh.
it's gratifying. It's always, more choice is always a good thing. Before we
Mm-hmm.
leave the dealership, I do
Yeah.
have to ask you this.
Yeah.
You go and you buy a car and it's always an interesting experience.
Mm-hmm.
Not always a great experience. The rise of Delivered and Tommy McCula I find very interesting.
Hmm.
because here you have a guy who says, listen, I can take the experience of dealing with a dealership away from you. And
Hmm.
he cannot handle all the people who want to pay
Hmm.
him $1,000 to not deal with a
Right.
dealership.
Right.
There's a message there. And if you
Uh-huh.
from the dealer side,
Uh-huh.
what's your reaction to that? And what's your thought where again people are lining up to
Sure.
pay $1,000 to not deal with a dealership?
Sure. No,
It's got to be a
absolutely.
little sobering.
Yeah, it is. It is, and I think the big message to it is from what I see is, the dealership model, hey, like industry evolves, right? Like life changes, industry evolves, people's preferences change, technology changes. So I think at the end of the day, the dealership model, it does have to adapt, right? Like we have to adapt to how we do business. And especially in this day and age, consumers, they have the most power. They have so much leverage. They have a lot of power because, back in the day, maybe before the internet, say, for example, or like when the internet was not, it was in its infancy. I mean, you can't really, like only way you could really buy cars is just go to your local dealerships and negotiate a price on and but nowadays with so much information out there, you can see what other dealers are asking for the cars. You can see what their cars are listed for. You can just find so much information. And now, if your dealer's playing games with you, or they're you feel that they're overcharging you, or you have another dealer that's out of state, but they're willing to make a deal for you. I mean, you can just do everything over the phone or over email and have the car shipped to you, right? That makes more sense for you, right? And I just from what I see is that the way the business is done, I mean, it has to adapt, right? We all have to adapt to how the business is done. We have to adapt to the consumer preferences. I think at the end of the day, just realizing that look, consumers have a lot of information, and they're not, and like it's not good to take advantage of them. I do not take advantage of customers. Like be respectful to them. They are here giving you your time. They are here because they're interested in your vehicle. Just be honest, be upfront with them. Like don't waste their time, right? Don't waste their time. Don't waste your time. I think yeah, just when they come in, just be respectful, treat them well, make sure they have everything they need from when it comes to information or what that is, and hey, like really just give them the best price, like just give them the best price off the bat, right? And just know exactly what I would say, like what the market is for the car, right? I think that's the big thing. If you're selling a car, if you're looking to put added markup on the car, or if you're discounting the car to get move those units, just understand like what the market is willing to pay. I think that's the big thing, right? And the economics they call it the utility curve, right? Willingness to pay for customers. Yeah, I would say just having a good understanding of the market, that's the big thing. And the second thing is, hey, just make sure that your staff members, they're treating customers with respect, right? Just treat them with respect. Make sure just recognize that look, like they do have a lot of knowledge. They're not walking in blindfolded. They're not here to play games, right? But then also at the same time, the big thing I see is follow up communication. Like that's the biggest thing that I see from what I see when it comes to successful people is just follow up with your customers. Like like all they really need is communication, right? Just be prompt with communication. Just follow up with customers. And if a customer is asking for a quote on the car, like it shouldn't take you like a full day to send a quote on the car, right? It doesn't take 2 days on a car. But if the customer is asking for a car, they want some pictures of it, right? So what happens is when you take a car in a trade, yeah, the car goes through what they call a reconditioning process, right? Goes through your safety inspection, your mechanical inspection, go through full exterior, interior detailing before it gets put on the lot to sell to customers. But so in the meantime, they'll put a stock photo of the car on the website, right? Because you still have to get the car up on the website, and the customer's calling. They want pictures of the car, and say they're located in North Carolina or Virginia, but like this is the exact spec they're looking for. For example,
Right.
it's like an X5 plug-in hybrid M Sport package, like drive it gray. So they're like, yeah, like I want to buy this car. Like I want to buy this car. Can you send me some pictures of this car? And then and it shouldn't take you a day to reply back to the customer, right? Or if they're asking for a specific question, like, hey, like, do you have any cars like with this option, or can you send me pictures of this car? Like, you should not be replying to them the next day. First off, and second off, like, you should not be replying to them like, oh, hey, like, are you interested in X5? But the customer's like, look, you know what I mean? They're like, yeah, like, I'm
Yeah.
interested in this X5. I want pictures of the car. Send me a quick walk around video. Like, I live in Virginia. Like, I want to make a deal on this car. And then so I think just putting ourselves in this perspective of the customers, like if I was a customer, if I was working dealership, if I was communicating with my sales advisor, like what would I want, like what would I expect, like what kind of treatment or what kind of experience do I want out of this, right?
I have
So
a funny
uh-huh,
experience. We
uh-huh,
have a couple BMW dealers in the state of Idaho where
hmm,
I live,
hmm,
but there's only one Lexus dealer in the state.
uh-huh,
And boy, they act like it. I've bought three new LXs over the years
Uh-huh.
So I've been a longtime customer. I do all my service at the dealership.
Hmm.
So with my last LX that I bought last year,
Hmm.
I I email my salesman. I say, "Hey, how do I turn off the thing?" And I was in there and
Uh-huh.
I found him and I said, "I want to turn off the lane departure warning." So he
Uh-huh.
showed me how to do it.
Hmm.
And then I'm like, it got to turn back on. And I emailed him and I said, does this does this thing turn back on every time I start the car?" And he didn't reply.
Hmm.
And then I had to call him and he said, "No, it resets all the time." And I said, "Well, I kind of wish you'd mentioned that."
Uh-huh.
And then, so I never hear from the guy ever, except once a year, he
Uh-huh.
texts me. Now, this is,
Uh-huh.
well, every 6 months. So I gotten two texts.
Uh-huh.
And the last text, he said, "Thank you for your being a customer." Again, this is 6 months.
Hmm.
I'm not bothering the guy. It was a
Uh-huh.
year ago now that I asked about the lane departure warning, and he didn't reply to an email. And I had to call him, and he replied,
Right.
and I
Uh-huh.
found him when he was there. So
Uh-huh.
I'm not a high maintenance customer. And then
Uh-huh.
I got a text around Christmas time because it's when I bought the car saying, "Hey, I'm just checking anything you need." So
Uh-huh.
I texted him back and I said, "Yes, I need to know how to, I can't activate the
Hmm.
kick to open the hatch thing, where you kick under the thing and the hatch opens."
Yeah. Yeah.
So of course he ignored it. It said red on the
Uh-huh.
text thing when I
Uh-huh.
sent it, and he never replied.
Wow.
How's that
Yeah.
for follow up? So
Exactly.
I found my dealership where, again, I've been a very loyal customer.
Hmm.
Their responsiveness is basically zero. I think it's a
Hmm.
terrible dealership. But
Hmm.
obviously you guys are different. You're respecting their time, respecting what they're doing. I think that's really great. With the Wall Street Journal doing an article on Tommy McCool and the rise of
Hmm.
delivered, um,
Hmm.
do you guys talk about it internally? Because this is a big story.
We haven't really talked about that internally, but I think there's definitely a lot of lessons to be learned from that. Right? I think the
Well,
big
maybe you guys don't need it. It sounds like you're responsive, you're treating people with respect,
yeah.
and I'm sure your customer satisfaction scores are high.
Yeah, I think the big thing is when it comes to with big dealership groups, I know Sonic is very big on it, like you said, this customer satisfaction index, and I'm sure AutoNation or Lithia, I'm sure Penske, I'm sure they are all very big on these as well. I know when it comes to special service sales, yes. So the big part of the advisors, big part of their pay plan is tied to their CSI score or customer satisfaction index. I think they call it like this, tied to that score. So if in the case of service, right, they're a big part of their bonus. I think it's like a third, like 30% of their bonus is tied to how they perform on their CSI scores from their customers. So it's so after the service visits, I think it's a couple of days for that. Sonic will send out an email, like a survey email, and then if they get anything less than a 10, they get talked to by the director or the manager, seeing like what's going on, right? Or if the customer had a bad experience, we will call them to, and ask them like what we can do better for next time, what can be improved. And I believe on the sales side, same thing. So based on their customer satisfaction score, they do get preference, like they do get, I would say, priority when it comes to. So at our dealership, we call a VIP cars. So when the customers they call about a specific car, they're like, "Hey, I'm interested in this, this specific X5 or this specific G80 M3," right? Then like they get priority. The people with the high CSI score, they get priority in getting assigned to these customers, right? So
Interesting.
that yeah. So that's a huge thing at these, I will say, big franchise dealerships, right? Customer satisfaction index, but still, I feel like in every business or in every dealership, there's always room for improvement when it comes to that. And I think the big reason these auto brokers, like, they've done so well is auto brokers, if you want to call them, right? So they found a niche, right? They found a niche, and I'm sure, like, for them, in his case, I'm sure the big thing is for customers, like, it's a lot easier to deal with him, right? Yeah, they pay him $1,000 kind of a commission, but then, like, he does all the negotiations on their behalf, right? I'm sure when
Right.
they contact him, he and his team, like, they get back to the customers right away. They follow with customers. I think that's the big thing. But I like you said, so I know, like, we're very big on customer satisfaction index, which is a very good thing. But I think there's always room for improvement in any dealership, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I want to shift gears a little bit because we
Yeah.
talked about how, that E92 was such an important influence on you in
Hmm.
working at Car and Driver and having these cars and having access to the cars.
Hmm.
Obviously, as you stay with Sonic and you move up, you're going to
Hmm.
have two things. Number one, you're going to make more money and be more successful. But in addition, you'll have access to cars.
Hmm.
What is your dream car? Like if you could project yourself to where you are in 5 years or
Hmm.
10 years or when you're 50,
Yeah.
um, like, okay, so like 5 years from now, what's a car you're like, okay, I would like to have that. And
Sure.
then the 10-year mark. What like you don't have to say BMW, maybe it's not BMW.
Sure, no, absolutely. That's a great question, That's one thing I love to hear from car enthusiasts as well. And I would love to hear your about your next cars as well, Dr. Schutz, that are in your horizons. But for me, yeah, it's like a 5 year, like I would say near future. So I'm in a similar position as Carl, where I think, so my wife, she wants to start a family here later on down the road. So I'm sure I'm in a predicament where I'll be, I'll be the one with the mission of going and buying a family SUV with an automatic transmission, right? So I would say like realistically, yeah, probably somewhere around probably something like Toyota RAV4, Honda CRV, Toyota Highlander, Honda Pilot, probably one of those lines. But like I will say practically, like that's probably what it is. That's what my brain is thinking. My heart, I would love if I could inject a little bit of my guilty pleasure, I would love a Jeep Grand Cherokee SRT. So from 2017 to 2021, Jeep Grand Cherokee
I
SRT with
didn't
the
expect that.
yeah, yeah. Oh, I love these SRT Jeeps. I've never really been a huge. I mean, so like I respect all cars, but I've never really thought of myself owning a Jeep until I saw the Cherokee SRT. So back when they came out with the SRT Cherokee in I think 2006, so WK1 Grand Cherokee SRT. I've been in love with this car ever since, and I love every generation of the Cherokee SRTs, and especially I think the latest one when it comes to looks and just everything is the best. So I would love one of those. But if I could stretch it, Trackhawk, I would love that. I think that's something that I could sell my wife on. She doesn't know what a Trackhawk is, right? All she needs to know is it's a 4 door family
SUV.
friendly SUV, right? Right. So yeah,
It's
I
a
think
four it's a four-door Jeep SUV that should never
right,
be anywhere near snow.
right, exactly. And being California, it's
Well,
we
let's
don't
say
get a
you
lot of
were,
snow. Yeah,
let's do this experiment. You're
sure,
50 years old, you
sure.
own a dealership,
Uh-huh.
and you could buy any car.
Sure,
It's not your brand, but you
sure,
could buy any car available today. In other words,
sure.
you know
Uh-huh.
you're now making tons of money. And what would your dream car be today if money's no object, but it has to be a new car?
Oh, it has to be a new car. Oh,
Because it's easy to
that's a good
say,
question.
oh yeah, I want to get, you're a
Yeah,
Porsche guy. I've always
yeah,
wanted a 930 turbo
yeah.
or, a 997 GT3 4.0. Those are
Uh-huh.
easy. But
For
it's
sure.
a little more difficult when you say, okay, it has to be a new car. Now, all
Uh-huh.
of a sudden, I agree. And before you answer, I'll give you a second to think about it.
Uh-huh.
For me, I would say something that really surprised me. But
Hmm.
my dream new car appeared on Tuesday.
Okay. Oh, I would love to hear about it.
It's the GT3 SC. I do not like
Oh, yeah.
convertibles. I don't even like sunroofs.
Uh-huh.
But I saw that and I'm like, that's it.
Hmm.
Manual only. And all of a sudden, I like that I can put the top down. I probably never would, or I put
Hmm.
it down rarely. But
Hmm.
I'm like, that's it. If I could have anything on the market today, I would
Hmm.
take that car. And again, I
Okay.
surprised myself a little bit. So, and my second choice would be a regular Turbo S 911. So
Okay.
you have
Oh, that's
everything.
cool.
What's you got to buy it one new car.
Uh-huh. One
And
new
you already
car.
have your family car, so it's a fun
Sure.
car.
Sure. I think if I had to pick a one like brand new car, wow, that's a difficult question. I think for me, I would like I would go yeah, probably a 911. I would definitely buy a 911 GT3. So that's always been a bucket list for me. So yeah, so when you asked the question, that was one of my cars I was gonna say, right? 911 GT3. My favorite generation for a GT3 is either the 997 or the 991.2. But hey, I will settle for a new one, right? I will settle for a new one. I wouldn't take a new one out of bed.
Settle. I like the
Right.
word settle.
Right. Yeah, settle. Yeah. So I think yeah, that's the route I would go, and so I would say if that's me, like you're thinking from my heart and my head, another car like I've always wanted to own. It's one of those things like I don't know if I'd ever pull the trigger on it, but one thing I've always wanted to own is like a Lotus. Like I like Lotuses, right? And unfortunately they don't make the Esprit anymore, but But the big thing about yeah, I know they make the Miura, so I would again I would sell for the Miura. I would love an Esprit if they still made that car. But interesting because I know you like to ask all your guests or all your people on the podcast like what was the car that uh, like what turned them from like a car enthusiast to a car nut. And for me,
Yeah.
yeah,
What is
like
that?
for me that was a 1988 or 89 Lotus Esprit. So that was yeah. So when I was 10 years old, one of my dad's coworkers at Micron, he had an Esprit. He was a younger British guy. He had a white Lotus Esprit. I think at the time he said it was like one of three in Boise. And when my dad found out he had a Lotus, he was like, "Hey, my son loves cars. Would it be? Hey, would you be cool to just take him for a spin in your Lotus?" And he was like, "Oh, I would love to." And I remember I was waiting in the it was like a Fred Meyer parking lot, right? For my dad and I were waiting for him. His name was Mitch. We're waiting for him, and I just see this white wedge shaped car just pull in, and I was like, "Oh, that's so cool!" And he took me in the car. We drove around for a while. He did pulls, right? He did a lot of pulls, and it was my first like entry into like a proper sports car, like a supercar. And yeah, so for me, I don't know if like I never really thought of like owning a Lotus, but Esprit's always had a special place in my heart. So that was, I would say, like turning point for me, right? So, but yeah, if I had to pick a new car, I don't they don't make Esprits anymore, but I'd settle for a Lotus Emira, right? So those
That
would be my
makes
two
sense.
choices. Yeah.
It's funny how that connection
Uh huh.
matters. I've always found it interesting how a connection can matter so much later. It makes
Hmm.
such an impression when you're young. For
Hmm.
me, so I'm going to ask you this question because the
Hmm.
car that I think of, for me, I really came of age in
Uh
the
huh.
80s. I grew up in the 70s, but I really came of age in the 80s.
Hmm.
And the one car that just had such an impact on me, and
Hmm.
I hope to own one at some point, is the
Hmm.
original E28 M5, the BMW
Oh,
M5
no
from
kidding.
the 1980s. And it was
Uh
only
huh.
available for a couple of years, and they all were
Hmm.
black with a tan interior. But
Okay.
I love that car, and I would take a 535i because it was so similar.
Uh huh.
But that's the one. But that's a long time ago. You're talking about a car that's, 40 years old. Andy, for
Hmm.
you, when you think back to is there a car that's not an Esprit, but more of
Uh huh.
something you connected with?
Uh huh.
You hear people talking about Civic R's from the 90s
Hmm.
or Supras. Is there a car for you that's kind of the equivalent of my M5?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that question. So for me, it's cool because you grew up in the 80s. I grew up in the 90s, early 2000s. So for me, the car that really did for me. So my all-time dream car, right? Like if I could purchase any car like today,
Yeah.
basically, right, it would be an R34 Skyline GTR, Nissan Skyline. Yeah, R34 GTR. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
So
tell the audience who doesn't know what that is, what years you're talking about. And of course, this was a car
sure.
never sold in the United States.
Right, exactly. So it's built between 1999 and 2000. I believe it's 2001, 2002. So it's Nissan Skyline. It's their so like well, how many generations is it? So but it's their yeah, so like their big thing was like R32, 33, 34. So but this is kind of like the holy grail of Nissan Skylines. So it's a sports car that Nissan made. They built and they at the time they built a lot of technology into this car. And but for me, it was interesting the, uh, back in the day when I was growing up in Korea, so they had these car magazines. It was called Car Vision. I don't think they're around anymore, unfortunately, but it's kind of like their car and driver like of Korea. And my mom would get me, about every month she would get me an issue of that, and I would just flip through and I would look at the cars. I would read the articles. Like I would know what they're talking about 90% of the time because I had no understanding of cars, but I liked the cars and I remember like I was flipping through. I still have that magazine with me. Like actually, I still have that at home. That issue. I was flipping through, and they did a scoop on the R34 GTR. So it had this full page picture of a Bayside Blue R34 GTR, and I don't know what it was about that car, but that just really captivated me. I thought that was the best looking, coolest car I've ever seen. And I think that was and before the Lotus, that's probably like the point when I that turned me into like an absolute car nut when it came to cars. And when I came to when I went from like just playing around with Hot Wheels cars to like wow, like I really like I really want a car. Like I really want this car. I think it was like the first car I've really truly lusted after, like to the point where I had the magazine open like open to that page with that full page, the Nissan GTR, yeah. Like I would just go look at that multiple times a day. Like I would just put it next to my desk, like when I was doing homework or whatever. Like it'll just be right here, so I can look at the car whenever I want. Like, and when I go to bed, like I will put that like above. Like I would literally put that above my head, and I will sleep with that car like next to me. So yeah, so that would be my E28 M5 on my case, right? I grew up in the JDM age when these cars were coming up, and I remember, yeah, like the Skyline was there, and the next page they had that Mark IV Supra, so that was cool too. Like once in a while, I'll flip to the Supra, but the Skyline was what really captivated me, and unfortunately, both the Skyline and the Supra, the prices have just gone through the roof over the past 5 to 10 years. I mean, I hope I'll have a chance to own one day, but we'll see. But just go back to your question, that was I would say like that's my ultimate car. Like if I had to pick one car that's really turned me into a car nut, and just one car that I've just lusted after off of like emotional triggers, yeah, it would be the R34 Nissan Skyline GTR.
I love that answer because that is a car. It's very raw,
Uh-huh.
and the engineers, the creators of the GTR, especially the early gen, the
Hmm.
R32 and R34, those
Hmm.
they were serious. And everything I was
Hmm.
talking about earlier about the Germans and the Japanese, but those they were serious, and
Hmm.
this was a legitimate thing, and they were very serious about making a legitimate car to compete with the Germans.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think they succeeded. I think they succeeded in that. I just wish they sold it in more markets. I wish they got a bit more, I would say, publicity with those cars. I know, like you said, like they built those cars to compete with the Germans, especially with Porsches, and compete in their touring car races and stuff like that. And they did very well in their races in Australia and Japan and whatnot. But I feel like at the time, yeah, I do wish they built it for like a more of a global market rather than just that Japanese Japanese
Yeah,
market.
there
So
you can't buy one that isn't right-hand drive, and that really
right,
limits the usability and I think
right,
limits the enjoyment to some extent. But
right.
yeah, they are great. I drove at a journalism event. I drove the current gen that's been
Uh-huh.
discontinued,
Uh-huh.
the last generation
Uh-huh.
GTR, and it was wonderful. I What I liked about it was it was imported to that one
Mhm.
was imported to the United States, and it was specifically designed to compete with the 911 Turbo S.
Uh-huh.
And what I liked about it was, and of course, numbers wise, Nürburgring and that kind of thing, it was a legitimate competitor. What I
Mhm.
liked about it was it had the performance and the feel
Mhm.
to legitimately compete with the 911 Turbo S, but it felt very different, had a different personality.
Mhm. Definitely, definitely. I think a lot of people they mentioned that the R35 GTR it's almost like driving a computer, right? It's right.
That's no, that is not true, and
It's
that's
not true. Okay.
I got into it and I was ready. Like it's going to be a video game. That's what everyone said.
Uh-huh.
It's a video game,
Yeah.
and it absolutely wasn't. It was loud. It was raw. It felt
Uh-huh.
now the gauges and the displays is
Uh-huh.
like a video game, but the feel was
Uh-huh.
not. It
Okay, I'm glad to
was
hear.
it felt very visceral and it felt very
Okay.
real. And I,
Okay,
I
that's cool.
I may have actually
Uh-huh.
enjoyed it more because I
Uh-huh.
was ready for it to be, like
Sure.
too virtual.
Sure.
And it was really raw and visceral and real.
Uh-huh.
So
Oh, that's
so
cool.
I loved it for that reason. It was not like a
Uh-huh.
computer or video game. I hope
Okay,
you get a
that's
chance to drive one, Andy, because first of all,
uh-huh.
you can find one, and
Mhm.
someone will probably trade one in, and you'll have a
Uh-huh.
chance to drive one. You will enjoy it, and it was much better to drive than I thought it was going to be.
Okay. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. I've never had a chance to drive one. Only GTR I've been in was a couple months back. So one of so somebody in our neighborhood, they recently they yeah, I guess they recently acquired a GTR and they sent it to a shop to get it built. So it was like it was 1,000 horsepower build GTR. It's one of those stuff. And yeah, he took me for a spin in it, and that thing was just mind-bogglingly fast. But that's the only experience I've had with the GTR. I've never had a chance to drive it or take it around the track or back roads. But I would love to. I would definitely love the experience someday.
Drive a stock one without 1,000 horsepower, and you'll have a great time. So I hope
Oh
that
yeah,
happens.
absolutely,
Well,
absolutely.
Well, listen, we are out of time, but
Uh-huh,
this has been a thrill. I'll repeat what I said earlier, Andy, and
uh-huh.
of course, thank you so much for coming on. But we're old, And, it's great to have the younger generation. People say that younger generation is not into cars. And of course, I've known you such a long time and you've always been into cars. By the way, a little shout out to your friend and my son, Carl, who was never really into cars, but now he owns a 997 911, and now he's
Yeah.
into cars.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, big shout out to Carl. Bummer he couldn't join us today, but I will. I'm looking forward to seeing him on your podcast next time, hearing a bit more about his car journey. But like you said, it's great. It's really cool to see how that happened because as far as I've known Carl, like he was never really into cars. Yeah, that was like it was more of like transportation for him. Never really thought. Yeah, it's like he never really gave a second thought about cars or him being a car enthusiast. But it was cool, like you said. Just one day something clicked. I don't know. Like maybe it was his 997 or maybe it was the M3s that he got a chance to drive when you had him, or yeah, but something clicked one day. I just remember like one day, like he started talking a little bit more about cars and how this car is fun, or like if I had a chance to have a go in this car or whatnot. And the next thing I know, he bought the 997, and now he's hooked. Right now, he's hooked on this whole car, the car hobby, and I guess he's seen a lot of it. But it's really cool to see how that's happened, and I look forward to seeing more of that from him.
Yeah. I think the thing that and the thing that
uh-huh.
I know is that ultimately
Uh-huh.
being a car enthusiast is more about the people than it is about the cars. And
Hmm.
I think he's discovered that, and he discovered that car people are interesting people.
Hmm.
Whatever, it took a long time, but now he's there. So, well,
Yeah.
listen, Andy, I'm really grateful for you to come on the show, and I
Mhm.
really appreciate this. This has been a lot of fun. Let me say, Stefan usually says subscribe, like, thumbs up, all that stuff. It helps
Uh-huh.
us grow our podcast. But I will say goodbye, and I'll say to Andy Choi, thank you so much.
Hey, thank you very much, Dr. Schutz. It's been a pleasure. It's been an honor. Thanks again for having me on here. And then I'll give you a channel shout out too. Yeah, subscribe, like, Cars on Call. Again, fantastic people, great content. And I look forward to seeing you and the team continue to grow. And I'll be checking in every week.
Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Schutz.